You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Home Field Apparel.
Right Up Meridian, baby.
Welcome back to Right Up Meridian. Back for our second straight week. Once again, reviving the podcast. I am Zion Brown, going solo on this one, and we got a little bit of fever to talk through now. Now that there's 3 games left in the season, a lot of things happening now with this fever team. It's really time for them to take care of business. But before we get to that, of course, all of our Back Home Network podcasts are presented by Home Field Apparel. Go to Home 23 for a special discount at Home Field for all home field items. And of course, they're selling crew necks right now. So go get those and go check those out. And of course, a lot going on now on the Back Home Network. Now that Indiana football is back in the season, of course, Crimson Cast always has you covered. But then now you have the big red carpet with Rhett Lewis. And Rhett, great guy, one of my favorites, breaking down Indiana football, giving an Indiana football specific show to our network now. Really good stuff there. So go check that out. Things are back in the full swing. People were upset, right, at a game that Indiana still kind of won pretty handily against Old Dominion on Saturday. So a lot of energy juice around that program. And then, of course, if you're down in Bloomington this week, Friday at the Buzzkirk Trumley Theater, Scott and Galen are down there doing their own show on Friday night. So go check that out if you are down in Bloomington and really have the chance to get down there and check that out. Unfortunately, I cannot be there. I wish I could, though, because that is incredible. They're going to do a live show from there. But now it's time to get into some Fever talk. And the main thing now is this magic number for the Fever. They have not yet clinched their playoff spot, but the new magic number for the Fever is 3. I'm recording this on Wednesday. The Dream have recently just beat the Sparks. The Sparks are 9th in the standings. The Fever are 8th. Of course, 8 teams get into the playoffs. And that means that as of right now, the Fever are in. They are a game and a half ahead of the Sparks right now. And the magic number is 3 with 3 games left for the Fever. So it's between them, the Sparks, and the Storm. So how this works now, the Fever need a combination of wins from the Fever and losses from those 2 other teams, the Sparks and the Storm, of 3. And that can happen, guys, on Friday night. So I really want to get this podcast in specifically now because of this timing. On all 3 teams play, and all 3 teams play a combination of games that could really get them to that magic number of 3. Of course, as you probably know, the Sky are here in Indianapolis playing the Fever. And if you guys haven't seen, Angel Reese just made some very peculiar comments about the Sky and the franchise as a whole that can't be too encouraging if you're a fan of that squad. And so right now, I feel like that team should be one that is kind of dismantled a little bit, things going off the rails a little bit with them having already been eliminated from playoff contention. So the Fever have that game on Friday. The Sparks play Friday night, and Atlanta, as we know, very good team, very, very good team. Very, very capable of beating the Sparks again. And then the Liberty and the Storm face off in Seattle on Friday night. So if the Fever handle business and beat Chicago, there's a chance that they could have clinched their spot in the playoffs by the end of Friday night, by the start of the weekend. But it is about handling business, and I'll get to that in a minute. But first, I guess at this point, I want to just share my overall thoughts on this Fever season. So obviously right now they're in this 2-game losing streak, having just lost to Phoenix on Tuesday night and then Golden State before that. They went on this West Coast road trip and finished 1-2, barely scraping by the Sparks, which huge win, right? Everything changes in the standings. The Fever only half a game up of LA if they had lost that game, that they won 76-75. So it was a much, much needed win for the Fever to get on Friday night, and they were just able to eke it out to get that victory. And now there's 3 games left for Indiana. They had this 21 game, then they're at Washington on Sunday, another very winnable game. And then on Tuesday, they end their season against the Minnesota Lynx. But this season has been obviously a rocky one, right? When you have a Fever have, whether it is Caitlin Clark, who has been out since July 15th, and I'll really go specifically in on her later on, but even Erin McDonald and all these other injuries, Sophie Cunningham, Sydney Colson, everything that has really affected this team. Chloe Bibby in the last few weeks has been in and out of the Fever lineup. It's hard to really grade this season. This season, the Fever had hopes of A, making the playoffs, which once again, they are in a solid enough position to do, and B, win at least one playoff series, which we'll see how that winds out if they can still maybe accomplish that goal. But right now, I wouldn't bet on it necessarily. But with this team, they came into this year really wanted to show that growth and almost look like a contender. And then right off the bat, you have Caitlin Clark's first groin injury. And then you have the DeWanna Bonner situation unfold. And that's been ugly. And just a side note on that, I know Caitlin Clark and DeWanna Bonner seem to have exchanged words in that game on Tuesday night, which was like, whoa, what's going on here? Like, I feel like we knew there was some sort of tension, but it hadn't been too on either party's side up to this point, but now it is. And now you saw that back and forth exchange between DeWanna and Caitlin. And one thing I'll say to that is it's sports. I think that's going to be a theme of a lot of my Fever podcasts. It's sports. Like, DeWanna Bonner signed a contract to play for the Fever. She was supposed to be this really impactful vet to come in along with Natasha Howard. And for whatever reason, she didn't feel like the fit was right a few games in, and she left the team and went to go play in Phoenix. For obviously, she's playing with Alyssa Thomas now, right? Those two reunited. But DeWanna Bonner only played 9 games in a Fever uniform and started 3. And it rubbed a lot of people the wrong way within the organization and of course, the fan base as well. But what I will say is that, things like this do happen. They've happened in the WNBA. I remember the contract divorce that Tina Charles had with the Mercury just a few years ago. Funny enough, it's now kind of flips back the other way for the Mercury, where they are getting a player as a result of a dispute, whereas a few years ago they had just lost a player as the result of a dispute like that. So these things happen. Even going over to the NBA, I remember the ugly situation, something very similar, where Derek Fisher was supposed to be on the Jazz and kind of and this is a role player that's not at the level of what DeWanna Bonner and Tina Charles have even accomplished, but just kind of finagled his way out of Utah and to go play with the Lakers again. And that was something that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. So I'm not sure exactly what was said between Caitlin and DeWanna, but I will say that these things happen and it is part of sports. And I think Caitlin is right to feel wronged. And I think DeWanna Bonner, she feels like her best chance to win a championship coming this year would be in Phoenix. Not sure if they will win one. I doubt it, right? They're not really a handful of teams I'm looking at in that spot, but you never know in situations like this. But going back to the full lens outlook on this Fever season, and specifically I want to talk about the Stephanie White of it all, where last couple of years, it was Chrissy Sides at head coach for this Fever team, and she was tasked with, jump-starting the rebuild. She had the back-to-back number 1 picks with Aaliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark, and a lot of people weren't happy with the way that Chrissy Sides ran things last year, and it was far from perfect. And if you kind of backtrack now, rewind 11 to 12 months ago, so many Fever fans were clamoring for Stephanie White, and reasonably so, right? I mean, Stephanie White had coached the Fever before, had taken them to the finals as a head coach back in 2015 when they lost that 5-game really thrilling series against Minnesota. And then she was doing a solid job with Connecticut with DeWanna Bonner and Alyssa Thomas just over these last few seasons. Now, once again, Connecticut was never able to get over that hump, and that whole core just fell apart, right? You started it back in the day with Kurt Miller, and you had Jonquil Jones and DeWanna Bonner and Alyssa Thomas and Brianna Jones, and they just were never able to really win that championship. But I understand why people wanted Stephanie White back in Indiana, back as the coach for the Fever. She's accomplished a decent amount, coach of the year in the WNBA a couple of years ago. But I would just say with her, or about her, and to fans about her, you got to show patience, because once again, this front office put together a team, Amber Cox, Kelly Krauskopf, and really expected things to go one way this season, just from a roster standpoint, from a roster and a lineup standpoint. And between the injuries and Bonner's exit, she hasn't gotten to coach the team that was built for her, right? That she kind of helped handpicked as well. And so, look, has it been perfect? No. Do I agree with every single coaching move that Stephanie White has made? No. But to look at this and say, well, first of all, I will say, I think Stephanie White is a good coach, but this is not some this isn't Cheryl Reeves, who they just hired, right? This isn't some coach who has accomplished as a head coach, right? I think a lot of the draw for fans wanting Stephanie White back in Indiana is the fact that she was a guard, a very talented guard back in her day. Of course, having the Indiana connection, playing at Purdue, being from Seeger High School, all of those things. Understandably so, fans wanted her back, but to think that it was going to be a switched out coaches, and not just because you switched out coaches, as I've mentioned, they changed their team around as well, but it was never just going to be this easy, seamless, okay, now we're the second or third best team in the WNBA. That's without Caitlin Clark. That's with or without Sophie Cunningham and Sydney Colson. And, of course, eventually they ended up acquiring Erin McDonald when DeWanna Bonner left. And she was very impactful when she was healthy and available. But now she is done for the year. But, yeah, it was never going to be perfect. And so what I would say is just have patience with it all, with Stephanie White and this entire situation. She's a good coach. She's a solid coach. Not the best coach in the league, right? I don't know if I'd put her in my top 3 or 4, but I would maybe put her somewhere in the middle of that pack. But you have to show patience. You can't, as fans, right, just expect to run one coach out of town and then less than a whole season into another coach's tenure question every single thing they do. Everybody in sports feels like, oh, we could get a coach better than ours. And that's just not always true. And so I think Stephanie White this year, you just got to get through this year. There's this Caitlin situation that we don't know what's going on exactly. And this team won't really get to show what it can do until next season, right? Even if they make the playoffs this year, I'm not sure where they end up and how that even looks in a playoff series for this team. So I would say continue to show this patience with her. And with this team, again, this season all comes down to these final 3 games where you have to take care of business, that magic number of 3. Basically, what I would say, too, I don't know if the Lynx plan to rest players in that final game. They have, I believe, clinched up that one spot pretty easily. So that last game on Tuesday could be a game where the Lynx don't feel the need to play anybody. But even when the Lynx rest some of their starters and their stars, as we saw just last week just 2 weeks ago, when they came into Gainbridge Fieldhouse and they won without Nafisa Collier. And so even if they're not playing all of their starters or whatnot, that's a Lynx team that is still very capable of beating the Fever. So I would say it's in the Fever's best interest to win these 2 games. You have to beat Chicago. If you lose the Chicago team with what's going on this week with the Angel Reese comments and the Tyler Marsh and everything, the back and forth, and Angel Reese saying, basically they lost to Golden State, and she basically said they're not more talented than us on paper. And it's odd. That's maybe something you hear like a GM, maybe even a coach say. It's odd to hear a player say that, right, when you're in that locker room every day. And just for her to say basically that she's uncertain about her future as well in Chicago, and to say that she, quote, might have to move in a different direction. You have to win that game right after somebody says that about their own team. And then once again, going to Washington on Sunday, we know this is a pesky, scrappy Washington team that really fought for a while to kind of stay in playoff contention, but they're now out of the playoffs, and you just got to get it done. You have to win those 2 games, and you'll probably be in if you win those 2. If you lose one, you could be in a tough spot. If you lose both, and then you have to go to Minnesota in a win or season's over situation, who knows what happens there. So take care of business is what I would direct to the Fever. And if they don't take care of business in these 3 games, then look, I'm open to it. I'm open to saying, hey, maybe Stephanie White could have done this, and that better. But right now, I'm still at a let's calm down mode. They're a little bit over 500 despite all the injuries, despite everything that's going on. And let's just take a chill pill. Let's take a deep breath and relax. I say that just to say, what in the world is going on with Caitlin Clark? We don't know. And fans haven't seen her play since July 15th, right? That game at Connecticut where with less than a minute to go, you see her kind of tweak her groin yet again, sprain it again, and a lot of fans are like, hey, it's September now, right? I'm recording on September 3rd. You'll hear this on September 4th or later. And people are just curious, why hasn't she been back in the lineup yet? We got the news a couple weeks ago that she also had a left ankle tweak that the team had kept secret for a while. But what I would say to this situation is, remembering now, I'm keeping on the theme here of Right Up Meridian, the Pacers and the Fever are the same organization. At the end of the day, this is the same organization that just saw its star point guard on the NBA side tear his Achilles, right, in Tyrese Halliburton. And I obviously, it's not the same decision makers necessarily, but it's all under the Pacers sports and entertainment branch. And I just don't see why the Fever would try to rush her back. I'm not exactly sure how ready she may feel. I know she did some 5-on-0 work the other day, but she still has not really done any contact practice stuff. And Stephanie White has said over and over again that they want to get her back for the regular season. Well, at this point, you've got less than a week to do that. So either it's happening or it's not, right? If you're trying to actually get her back to play in the regular season. And then that begs the question that if you make the playoffs if you're the Fever, and we'll talk about some playoff scenarios later, do you want, if she hasn't played in a regular season game, do you want Caitlin Clark to just go out there for the first time in nearly 2 months in a playoff situation? I don't know if that's the right way to go about things, right? Like, it's just a lot to put somebody through when they haven't played basketball, live action, basketball in 2 months. So I don't know what the right scenario is. Obviously, this is not how things were in Indy that she wasn't able to participate in. She's only been able to play in 13 of the team's 41 games to this point. And even in those 13 games, she struggled. I'd be willing to bet that injuries are a part of that struggle that she had, right? That she wasn't really feeling like herself throughout it all. And we saw the numbers, right? She was just 37% from 28% from three from Caitlin in those games. And it just wasn't perfect. And obviously, this team is desperate for a point guard right now. You've got Kelsey Mitchell, who we are about to talk about, getting to a lot of point guard play. And they're just trying to figure things out, whether that's with Mitchell, Petty, or whoever. They're just really going on the fly. They acquired Ariel Powers, who has now played in 5 games for this team. And it's just really been so on the fly with that guard position, those ball handlers. You lost Caitlin, and then we found out Sydney Colson and Aaron McDonald were done for the season in the same day. And there was just nothing they could do, nowhere to go at that point for the Fever. But when Caitlin does come back, I still expected there to be some sort of minutes restriction, right? We saw it the first time she came back. And so I want to know what that looks like. And then I think you can bring some organization to this team's offense, assuming that she can come back at an all right rate. This team felt like it struggled to score at moments against Phoenix. I know they still ended the game with 79 points, but there were multiple lulls in that game, especially the one that broke it open for the big lead for Phoenix that Indiana was never able to recover from. And then they only scored 63 against Golden State, the Valkyries. And obviously that's one of the best defenses. That's a great defense, one of the best in the league. But to still only put up 63 points in a game, you're definitely losing some sort of offensive punch that the Fever just did not have in this game. And the only reason really the Fever are still in playoff contention is Kelsey Mitchell. In these 19 games since Clark got injured, she's averaging 22 a game, shooting 44% from the field, 42% from three, also averaging a little bit over 4 assists a game in that span. And I just want to use this time to say, hey, appreciate Kelsey Mitchell, what she is doing this year, and really the way she has held things down for this organization for a few years now is truly special, right? In an era where it's easy to ask out. Look at Marina Mabry, who got traded from Dallas to Chicago, asked out of Chicago. Now she's in Connecticut, where she seems to be happy now, but even before the season, she was asking out of Connecticut, right? And a player like that who's bounced around, or even somebody like Jewel Lloyd, who had stayed in Seattle for a while. Like, I'm not knocking her at all, but eventually she was just like, hey, I don't want to be here anymore. Ends up in Vegas. Same thing in that trade, I guess, to go with Kelsey Plum. She was in Vegas. She was, like Kelsey Mitchell, a very decorated college scorer. That was a high draft pick there. Kelsey Mitchell was the second pick in her draft. Plum was the first pick in hers. And she was just like, hey, I'm ready to kind of have my own team and do this and that. And so it's easy to ask out. Kelsey Mitchell was a free agent last offseason. And granted, she just signed a 1-year extension. A lot of that is CBA related. I believe she still wants to be around Indiana. We'll see how that works out with her. But when you look at just the way she stayed in Indiana through all the lows of this team now these last few years, should they make the playoffs this year, it'll be back-to-back playoff appearances after Kelsey Mitchell had not yet been able to make it in her career. So it's been truly incredible to watch her this year, especially if you guys remember at the beginning of the season, she had her own sort of hand injury that I think was kind of ability to shoot the ball. I think it still has affected Kelsey Mitchell specifically at the free throw line, where she's shooting just 78%. I think that might be a career low for her, right? This is somebody who usually is high 80s, low 90s at the foul line. And so for her to shoot just 78% this year, that's kind of odd. And yes, it is indeed a career low for Kelsey Mitchell at the free throw line. So even she's gone through injury, but she has managed to play through it, hasn't missed a game yet this season. Neither her or Aaliyah Boston or Lexi Hall have missed a game for the Fever this season. So all three of those women have kind of been steady in the Fever lineup throughout the year. But look at Kelsey, she'll probably make her. She definitely, actually, I am fairly confident she'll make her first All WNBA team this season. She's third in the league in scoring, and she'll probably be first team All WNBA. Right? I know the Fever a couple of weeks ago were trying to kind of jumpstart an MVP campaign for Kelsey Mitchell. That's a little too rich for me, right? Just with the way that Asia Wilson, Nafisa Collier, and even Alyssa Thomas, who we saw kind of carve Indiana up last night, with the way those three players have played, the idea of Kelsey, really being in the MVP race is kind of far-fetched, but hey, that's what you do to your teammates, right? You try to hype them up and say, hey, look at what they're doing, especially in the face of adversity, which the Fever, as I have said repeatedly, have been in this year, right? No doubt. So I just think it's been really remarkable to watch Kelsey this year. And what strikes me about her is that she can score in so many different ways. I forget which game this was, but I was texting Tony East, and I was just saying, if I was a guard in the WNBA and I'm guarding Kelsey Mitchell, I would be terrified to see that dribble handoff coming my way in the corner, because she is just so good at reading the defense, where sometimes she comes off the dribble handoff, she gets that screen from Aaliyah Boston or another big, and she is either has a clear path to the hoop, or two defenders have to both kind of come to Kelsey Mitchell. She's able to dump it off to the big, and that's an easy layup for them. Sometimes she sees that handoff being top locked and really play too hard. She can back cut in an instant and boom, layup at the hoop for Kelsey Mitchell. And I really love the portable players like her, right? Like, I think as I've grown as a basketball fan, a basketball watcher, players who can really get it off ball have grown in value in my mind. And I love the fact that Kelsey Mitchell can do it off ball, but then you get her in isolation. If you get her switched on to a slower footed player, she's going to take advantage of them too. We saw that over and over again against Phoenix. She just dropped 29 points in that game, even though it was a loss for the Fever. And so somebody who can score both with the ball in their hands, it can be effective as a cutter, coming up and just finding holes in the defense off the ball. It's super valuable. And I wish we had gotten to see this version of Kelsey Mitchell with Caitlin Clark this season, right? You saw that chemistry grow as last season went along. Just when you have a very ball-dominant guard like Clark and somebody who can move so well without the ball like Kelsey Mitchell, it creates a whole world of problems. But kudos to her for what she's doing, having the best season of her career, averaging 20.5 points per game, which is the most in her career. She's, after last year, once again, when she was taking off the ball quite a bit, she was kind of low, 1.8 assists a game. She's back up to 3.4 assists per game this season. So she's gotten that playmaking back up a little bit as well. So kudos to Kelsey Mitchell. Shout out to her. Fever fans, appreciate her while you have her, because she is truly one of the most guards in the WNBA and really just a true bucket in every sense of the word. So to wrap this up, I just want to talk about what would the Fever's preferred playoff matchups be should they make the playoffs and they get to that magic number of 3. So right now, as the 8 seed, they would have to face off against the Minnesota Lynx. And I will say the Fever this year against Minnesota have fared, in comparison to the rest of the league, I would say. Now, it's hard to judge, though, because we've seen so many different versions of this Fever team. But, of course, they were able to beat the Lynx to win that Commissioner's Cup game. And they're 0-2 in official regular games. But you saw the game I just talked about, the 2 games I just talked about, where one was Friday on August 22nd back here in Indianapolis, just a 5-point loss against the Lynx in that game. And that was one that was really a tight one to the end, but the Lynx just were just a little bit better. And again, that's with the Fever having all their injuries. I think they had just 8 players available in that game. And, of course, Fee was out for Minnesota in that matchup as well. Then they go to Minnesota 2 days later, and they lose by 13, a more lopsided victory that time around for the Lynx. But they fare decently well with the Lynx. I still don't think that's the team that they would probably want to play most, if I had to guess, right? Just because the Lynx are just so good, right? Like, they have run through the league this year, and I just don't think the Fever would necessarily want to play them. But I don't think they would want to play a team like the Dream either. And the Dream are right there near the top of the standings right now. And the reason I say that is just because of how many threes the Dream play. If Caitlin Clark is playing, maybe that's a different scenario. The Dream are now in second place after their win tonight. Just a half game above Phoenix and Vegas. But the Dream just get them up when it comes to those threes. And they shoot them at a decent enough percentage to make it pay off. And so you're at a math problem, and the math equation favors the Dream in that scenario. Of course, Carlos Mesco this year doing a tremendous job with that team. I think he's the front runner for Coach of the Year, if I had to guess. And so I don't know if I'm crazy to say that maybe this team would rather play the Lynx than the Dream, because the Lynx don't shoot quite as many threes as the Dream do, and the way that they're able to get them up. And then, especially right now, I just don't know who guards who on that Dream team, especially Alicia Gray, right? Because you can only really put Lexi Hull on one of them between Gray and Ryan Howard. So you have to decide which one you want to put Lexi Hull on, and then that opens up a whole other can of worms. Phoenix, to me, is the team that the Fever should want to see the most. They beat them once this season already, and they've lost twice to this Phoenix team. And we saw the game last night, but if Caitlin Clark is healthy, once again, none of those games came with Caitlin Clark. I think it's a bit. I know last year when she was in Connecticut, Alyssa Thomas would guard Caitlin Clark. Not sure if that would be the case this year. There's, more options. You can probably put Copper on her and feel pretty comfortable about it. But of those three teams at the top, those 3 or 4 teams at the top, I think Phoenix is the matchup you want. And you also look at Vegas, but do you really want to run into a Vegas team that has Asia Wilson and these players who have done it? They've gone through it and they are hot. They are on fire right now. And so I'm not sure anybody should want to play this Vegas team that's on the 12-game win streak right now. So I think of all the teams that they could play, the 4 or 5 up there, I guess there's still a chance for New York as well. But I'm kind of, because they're 2.5 games back of that other grouping of Vegas, Atlanta, and Phoenix, I'm kind of discounting them from this scenario. I think of all those teams, Phoenix would be the best matchup for the Fever. But once again, can't get too far ahead of ourselves against Chicago for sure. If they don't win that game, they could be in some serious trouble. But Friday night, Fever fans definitely is one to keep an eye on, between the Fever hosting the Sky, the Sparks being in Atlanta, and the Liberty facing off against Seattle. The Fever could clinch a playoff spot on Friday night if all goes well. If not, there's still 2 games left after that for the Fever, where they have to figure things out and find a way to get back in the playoffs for a second straight year. But thank you so much for listening. I've been Zion Brown. This has been another episode of Right Up Meridian on the Back Home Network.